Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic day. We got a lot to talk about on this show. As I mentioned yesterday, I took part in a live draft. The coverage was over at SiriusXM, courtesy of Jake Seeley and his Flex Leagues. A SuperFlex draft with a lot of sharp guys, a lot of sharp people in the draft. It was tough. It was challenging. Everybody has their guys. They went after their guys. I kind of got some of my guys, and I took a little bit of a turn like I usually do midway through drafts where the wheels just completely fall off. But I don't mind the squad. I'm not going to talk too much about my squad. We do have a very sharp mind joining us in a little bit who took part in the draft, had the first pick in last night's SuperFlex draft. It is Mike Randle. Can be found Randle Rant on the Twitter machine from 4 Football. Also does some stuff for Fantasy Pros. Fantastic guy, like super sharp guy from a fantasy standpoint, from a betting standpoint. I know he covers a lot of college sports and NBA and NFL too. So we're going to talk some NFL on this show, maybe get his thoughts on the draft, certainly, maybe some, just overall takeaways, like reaches and maybe guys that fell. And we'll dive into his team, maybe the strategy, of course, in super flex leagues. Quarterbacks will just fly off the board. And that was the case last night as well. The first 5 picks, all quarterbacks. Albert in the house. Good morning. We appreciate you always hanging out and giving us love here on the show. If you're watching live on our FTN Network YouTube page, smash the like button. If you're watching on Game Plus Network, you can hop on over. This show, of course, is available to you on iTunes and Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. But you can also watch on our FTN Network YouTube page as we stream live Monday to Friday at 12 Eastern. But if you have any questions at all, I know this is draft season. Drafts are really starting to ramp up. Keeper league stuff. You got to have your keepers in. At some point, whether your commissioner has a deadline or not. I know that's happening in a lot of my leagues, and we're starting to get a lot of keeper questions and just overall fantasy football questions on this show as well. So if you have any, now's the time, because Mike is super sharp, and we will be able to talk about that here with him. But again, if you're just watching on Game Plus, we do appreciate you. Always a fantastic lineup. Jake Seal and myself recorded this morning, All in Football, which you can catch on Game Plus this evening at 8 Eastern. We dove into the draft. We talked a lot about this draft already. But I wanted to do that with you guys as well. But again, if you're watching on Game Plus, you want to hop on over to our FTN Network YouTube page. You could ask any question that you want, and I will always circle back on this video. I spent some time last night trying to answer a lot of the questions because we've pretty much covered everything that we need to cover on this show to lead up to your drafts. We've previewed every single team in the NFL. We have rankings and sleepers and undervalued and busts and breakouts for every position. We've dove deep into top 40 wide receivers and top 40 running backs, top 20 tight ends and quarterbacks, and just tried to help you guys out. All the links inside the description of this video and other videos on our FTN Network YouTube page. Guys are doing live drafts, high stakes drafts. Michael Govier and Vlad Sedler are going to do one this evening. A beat Michael Govier NFFC style, high stakes. Those have been super fun to take part in, to watch and to listen to, the sharp minds like Nelson Sousa and Vlad dive into their process in high stakes leagues as well. No SuperFlex stuff there, but people are putting their hard-earned bucks on the line. So it's really nice to kind of see their thought process and hear them walk through some of their picks. But hopefully you can get something out of this draft, and we're going to show you, and we'll talk strategy in SuperFlex as well. Deesh in the house, loves SuperFlex and 2 quarterback content, best leagues in my opinion. I agree. It kind of brings back the value at the quarterback position. If you play in a single quarterback league with like 10 or 11 of your buddies in a 10 team or a 12 team, I don't think you really need 2 quarterbacks, especially if you have a top 5 quarterback. I don't think you really need a second one. There's always quarterbacks available on the waiver wire. You get into like tough decisions if you have like a Russell Wilson and a Joe Burrow. Like, I don't think that kind of stuff is needed. But you'll always find quarterbacks on the waiver wire. Derek Carr may not even get drafted in a 10-team league, and this guy could finish as a top 10 quarterback. I said it yesterday. I think people are sleeping on Derek Carr, and there was a couple pushbacks. Like, nobody is sleeping on Carr. He's going as quarterback 13 or 14. When I say that, I think he could finish as a top 10 quarterback. I really do. Last year at 4,800 yards, he's got the 3rd or the 4th most passing yards in the NFL since 2019. I think only Brady Mahomes, Matt Ryan are ahead of him. He's been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. And now you're adding Devontae Adams to the squad. He essentially traded in Edwards, Henry Ruggs, Zay Jones for Devontae Adams, one of the best wide receivers in the game, right? Arguably the best in the NFL. I don't think there's any debate about that. Hunter Renfrow, an addition offensive coordinator, now head coach now, Josh McDaniels, and then Darren Waller. Like, there's mismatches all over the field. And the division that they play in, there's some holes, of course, in the offensive line. I get that. It's pretty leaky. Defensively, they got some issues as well. But man, they're going to play in a lot of shootouts, especially inside that division. They got at least 6 games. We're going to see point totals of about 50. So we'll dive into all that stuff. We'll show you guys the board, talk to Randle about the strategy. He's hanging by here in the next block. Hopefully hang out with him for a couple segments. Maybe we'll get some future stuff out of him, put him on the spot, see who he likes to win the Super Bowl. Maybe to see who he likes to win that tough AFC West division, because I'm back and forth. I got to put in my picks soon in one of my pools, the order which I think that division will lay out. And I don't know. I wake up one morning and I'm like, Chargers, and JC Jackson goes down. This Chargers squad is like, what is happening with them? For years, they get JC Jackson. He's already hurt. I think he's going to be ready for week 1 potentially. Is some talk that it's a 2 to 4 thing. I think he had an ankle surgery, scope thing in his ankle. I'm not a doctor. That's the most I can tell you. I know that the timeline is like 2 to 4 weeks, but just always something seems to happen with this Chargers squad. On paper, like if you're playing Madden with no injuries for a full season, I think you want the Chargers, right? I mean, that roster is absolutely loaded. But again, they're dealing with something already. Plus, the Broncos are for real as well. Daily Handle in the house. MLB picks have been fire. Appreciate you. Yeah, yesterday on this show, I think we got one wrong. 7-2 overall over at FTNBets.com. We have the package, all the sports, all the picks, projections, tools, Discord. It is all there available for you over at FTNBets.com using that promo code Meaney. A couple picks for you a little bit later on. A lot of afternoon baseball action today, so make sure you get those fantasy baseball lineups set. Follow FTN alerts. You get notified right away when anybody makes a bet over at FTNBets.com. But I tried to attack some later games for you guys, for those watching over at Game Plus. It's no good for me to tell you a game that's going to start here in like 15 minutes. You won't get the pick in time. But we do have MLB picks and props around the diamond coming your way at 1:30 Eastern here on our FTN Network YouTube page, as well on a Game Plus network at 6 Eastern. Myself, MLB Dream, and Frank Brank. Those guys have been hot fire. I don't think they've missed a pick this week, and last week they were pretty much perfect as well. So I'm just kind of hanging out with them and watching them reel in all the dough. Appreciate you guys. Randle's in here next. We'll take a quick break and we'll dive into last night's SuperFlex league, courtesy of Jake Seeley. Shout out to him. He's been doing some wonderful stuff in the industry for years, and this is pretty cool. He gets a lot of people together to do these drafts, and they're a lot of fun. So we'll dive into this next with Randle. Hang tight.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN data.
Welcome back into Mean Streets here live on our FTN Network YouTube page, presented by Game Plus Network, powered by FTN. Chris Meaney here with you as you bring in Mike Randle. As you see there, Randle Rant on the Twitter machine. You can catch him over at 4for4 Football, also Fantasy Pros. Dude, you're doing all kinds of stuff. And last night you took part in the SuperFlex draft, courtesy of Jake Seeley. Welcome in, man. Thanks for taking the time here today. Appreciate it.
Chris, it's a pleasure to be with you. So excited last night. I mean, that draft went fast because we've all been doing the research. We know exactly who we want. I mean, it was intense. It was normally get that 90-second clock. We did not have it last night, but it was a lot of fun, of course.
It was a lot of fun. You're right. It did come at you fast. It's always exciting for me to get together with people like you and other people in this industry, and everybody is so sharp. They have their guys that they want. They have their strategy in place, and it is tough, man. There's no guys that you have as like maybe a sleeper or somebody that's on your list. Like if you want them, you better, you got to kind of be aggressive with that. And we do have some questions, and people, they're liking SuperFlex. They're talking about two quarterbacks, and Jacob Henry jumps in here and says he's always torn on taking two quarterbacks early or one stud and waiting to get the gold at other positions as well. Before we bring up, I want to hang out with you for a couple segments, if that's cool. Maybe we bring up the draft and we dive into what happened last night, and then we can break and really focus in on your squad, which I love. And if people have been hanging out with me on this show and listening on iTunes and Spotify, wherever it is that you listen, there's a lot of players that you got that I have talked a lot about and I like. But I want to just talk about your strategy. You had the first pick. Like, you had the first pick overall. You didn't waste any time. I guess you were thinking about it all day. I don't know. You just knew Josh Allen right away. But what is your strategy overall? Like, you see the board. So the first five quarterbacks come off the board, right? No real surprise. Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, Jackson, Hurts. And then you start to get into some of these skilled position players, a bit of a mini run there at running back and Taylor and CMC. And then you go over to wide receivers and Jefferson and Cup. And then you kind of get back into some quarterbacks. But what is your strategy overall when it comes? Does it depend on where you are in the draft? Would you have addressed this differently if you were picking towards the end of the first? What's your overall strategy in Superflex? Do you feel like you need two quarterbacks in the first 2 or 3 rounds?
It depends on where you pick. It's exactly what you said, Chris. In Scott Fishbowl a couple of years ago when he had Superflex, and I decided to wait on quarterback. And of course, a lot of it goes with the room. You have to project the way quarterbacks are going to fall in the room. I waited on quarterback that year. I waited way too long. And I ended up with just Matt Ryan, who didn't have a great year. And so in a super flex draft, what I think is important is you look at your tiers. So you identify, because it's super flex, the quarterbacks that you think can have big years. The 3 that have stood out to me all off season, of course, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, and Kirk Cousins. Those are the 3 as per value that I was targeting. So I was going to go Allen first because I think to get that locked in top 3, barring an injury, which is true for anyone, production at the quarterback position, you can't pass it up. So that was an easy one for me. But the second one was a huge debate, and we talked about it off air because I really wasn't sure whether I wanted to wait for a Mac Jones, wait for a Justin Fields. But because I think Cousins is going to have a potential top 6, top 5 quarterback season, I could not pass up grabbing him with the second pick.
Yeah, I like Cousins a lot too. I mean, he's underrated, from a real life standpoint and a fantasy standpoint. You got, a new head coach there, Kevin O'Connell. He's moving, offensive coordinator with the Rams, and he comes over now in Minnesota, more 3 wide receiver sets potentially. Thielen's a touchdown machine, whether you think, the touchdowns are going to come down or not. He just is, like he has been for a couple of years. Everybody likes Justin Jefferson, right? He's jumped ahead of Cooper Kupp here on average over the past couple weeks. And then you got a nice little sneaky guy in KJ Osborne and Cook out of the backfield. There's a lot of things happening for sure in Minnesota, and even Irv Smith. So yeah, I like it. If we could bring up this board again, Tyler, we'll probably reference this a few times here with Randle. So the first 5 quarterbacks go off the board. You're right. Like, if you don't go Cousins there, then you are probably, you're thinking about Tua, you're thinking about Fields, you're thinking, like you said, maybe Matt Ryan or Lawrence there. So I think you kind of have to be aggressive in that situation. So say if you were towards the back end, kind of like where I was in pick 10, I kind of felt like, I'm going to take Eckler there. I kind of had a battle in my head, like Eckler or Chase, or I really like Devontae Adams as well. And I think, okay, fine, I'll take one of these guys, and I'd be happy with either Burrow, Brady, Murray, or Wilson. But knowing that I probably only have one quarterback with those first two picks. I'm not getting a top 15 guy, really. Like, and it's a dangerous game, Randall. Like, it really is. Like, I think what you said, you get a top 10, and maybe there's two guys that you feel could be a top 10 as well, and Cousins, or a little bit later on. You and I are one of only a couple teams here that only rolled with two quarterbacks. And I think that's okay, right?
I think it's okay because we can always grab someone. I mean, the Seattle quarterbacks were available. And I'm a big fan, Chris, that if you're going to invest early, so for example, if you're taking Jonathan Taylor early and you're doing like a hero RB build, you're banking on the fact that you're going to have a solid season from Jonathan Taylor and that he's not going to be injured. So if we're taking and spending draft capital for those two quarterbacks early, which is what I did, I don't feel a need to get a third quarterback because if one of them goes down, I don't know if Geno Smith or Drew Lock is going to save my season. So
Exactly.
it's a risk reward. I'm going to put that investment in. Now I have to look at other positions. I like what you did. If I was in the back half there, sure, if Jefferson could have fallen to me, yeah, that's exactly where I would have went. But you have pass catching backs. And the other guy that I was targeting, if I didn't get Cousins, the debate was Aaron Jones, only because I knew he wasn't going to come back to me. And his splits without Devontae Adams, I mean, I looked it up. I think in 8 games without Devontae Adams, we're talking 8 more PPR points per game. We're talking about 2 more targets, 2 more receptions. They are huge. So that was the option. But I thought I could get A.J. Dillon. That was the plan. And, of course, I got sniped there by Fred just coming around in round 6. So I like what you did in your spot too. And it's a decision. It is a roster construction decision, which I think people focus on too much. They talk about players. I think it's roster construction.
Yeah, I wasn't going to be able to go knowing that I was having pick 10 and the way that the quarterbacks fall, or they get drafted in that first round. I just knew I wasn't going to be able to go quarterback. I just wouldn't like my team that way. If I went that route, I wouldn't have, an RB1 really. I think I don't have an alpha wideout like you. You got a couple alpha wideouts, and certainly one that I definitely really like. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but I still want to talk about the strategy just a little bit. So Jake asked me this morning on All in Football, and Florio won it last year, Michael Florio, and he said that, and he talked about Joe Pisapia, who you're familiar with, and you're talking about tiers and relative position value and things like that. And he said he got himself a top 5 quarterback in Jalen Hurts, but then he didn't attack the position until round 9 there with Daniel Jones. If you can bring that up again, Tyler, you could see, people are getting their quarterbacks in the first 4 rounds. Most people have, 2 quarterbacks, but he was one of the few that addressed it early and then didn't do it again for a little bit. Is that strategy something that you would consider as well? Or do you feel like there's a bit of a drop off there from like, his quarterback too may not be as strong as most people's?
I agree with exactly what you said about your spot and about Mike's spot. I don't want to reach for 2 quarterbacks that I think could end up, maybe one ends up as a low end top 10 QB and the other one is around 13 to 15. I don't think that's the proper move. So I like what Mike did. He takes Jalen Hurts, which is one of his guys, a top 5 quarterback, and then he wants to get elite wide receivers. I do think, and I've been saying this all over social media, I think you need Buffalo Bills representation. I think you want to have that because they are an explosive offense. They are a Super Bowl contending team. You want a piece of that offense. So I love what he did with Diggs. Then he comes back with Lamb. So what he's done now in a half-point PPR, he's secured 2 solid wide receivers. He has his top quarterback. Why get a mediocre second quarterback in round 2? Just wait and try to hope that either Jones or Mariota pan out. I like what he did. That's what I would have done in your situation or Mike's. Yes.
I love it. I got to ask you about Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson goes in this draft. Where'd he go? Round 9. We won't see him till week 13, right? Like, I guess, best case. 3rd quarterback here, Russell, Winston, fine. You have him for a playoff run. Are you in? Like, would you take him in a super flex, or is that kind of a wasted pick?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Josh Gordon corollary here, Chris. I remember when Josh Gordon was supposed to come back a few years ago, and I drafted him with a late pick, and I held on to him. And then you remember when they come back, they need a couple weeks to get acclimated. Yeah. So if he's coming back in week 13, what you're doing is you're saying, I believe that I will have a valuable starter for the playoffs. That's a lot of ifs for me. And so, no, I have not had good success with a player who has been on suspension for a while and then come back. That's too late for me. If Deshaun was out 6 games, I could definitely see it. But for me, I don't want any part of that because it is holding up a roster spot. This is not a huge, deep bench that we have here.
Right.
So I don't really want to go there. But listen, if he ends up returning, gets hot, Amari Cooper, the offense, the Browns are supposed to be good. They expect to be good. It could pay off, but it's a little too long for me.
Yeah, do you feel the same about Hopkins? I mean, that's only 6 games. So what are you doing with Hopkins? Are you if he's falling down draft boards, are you taking him? Because I agree with you. It's a lot of what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
For Watson, again, you're only going to get him for just the start of your fantasy football playoffs if you make it. And if something happens to this team where there's a couple injuries, he may be that first guy that you just cut, where in that 9th round, I mean, you could have got, there's a lot of great players going to that 9th round. Olave, Penny, Hunter Renfrow, Damian Pierce, like Devontae Smith. Like there's a lot of good players, bench pieces that, he could have had. And maybe it works out, but I'll ask you the same sort of question here. Hopkins goes, I guess we were thinking about him. He just went right around you. Jody takes him in round 9. So you go Brendan Ayuk, which I love. And then Stevenson, 2 breakout candidates for me. And then Hopkins there. Were you considering him at all? This is another guy. He's on your bench for quite some time. If you fall into some injuries, then you could really be in a tough spot to start the season. And by the time you get to week 7, I mean, you could be really behind the 8 ball, Randall.
Yeah, it was a consideration. It comes down to value. It comes down to where he ends up dropping. I like what Jody did there. He drops to an area. Would I reach for him in around 7 or around 8? It's a little early for me. But once he gets to 9, 10, sure, because you're looking for upside. You're looking for players there that you think could really hit. Who better than Hopkins in an offense with Kyler Murray? He's out 6 games. It's been a while. So if he dropped a little bit lower, yes, I happen to be high on Ayuk as well. I needed a running back with Stevenson. That was, again, roster construction. But no, I think that area is a solid area to go after Hopkins. He's going around players that I think are unknown, rookies, second options. I think that's a real good spot. Jody, I still am frustrated. Jody beat me in flex leagues. I had a perfect season going when Alvin Kamara had the 6 touchdown game. I remember that one, Chris. That was the championship. Yeah. So I lost the undefeated season to Jody. So he's been a thorn in my side, and I'm not surprised he did well again.
Dude, you go perfect all year, and that's how you lose? Are you kidding me? You lose.
And he needed Chris, if he had 3, I win. He had 6.
He had 6.
It was so frustrating. Yeah.
Of course he had 6. You know what's funny about that? I have Kamara in a dynasty league. It's been going on for years when my home leagues. I had Kamara during that run as well, and I lost my matchup. I think there was just like 3 or 4 other players on the opposing team that also went off. But imagine having Kamara on that squad and losing.
I had that night. I had Allen and Diggs that week, and if you remember, they went against the Patriots, and they had 6 touchdowns. That's right. It was so funny. It was great, though. It was a great battle. A lot of fun. Yeah.
Fantastic. Dude, hang on for one more block if you don't mind. I may keep you for a little bit just since I have you. I mean, like I said off the top, man, you really are a sharp football mind. I want to dive into your team, and there's a couple other players and maybe teams I want to ask you about as well. So hang tight. More talk here with Mike and myself. Keep it locked. welcome back in. Chris Meaney and Mike Randle here with you. We're going over last night's SuperFlex League, courtesy of Jake Seeley and the Flex Leagues. A lot of fun last night. Randle picked in the first spot, and he started off with Josh Allen. But before we get to your team, there are a couple players I want to bring up with you because this happens every year. You've been following the sport for quite some time. Guys have moments in camp, guys have moments in preseason, and guys just like jump up draft boards. I remember Amir Abdullah when he had like fantastic runs in the preseason against the Jets one year. This guy just jumped like 4 or 5 rounds. So there's a couple players I want to ask you about. Isaiah Pacheco, he goes as RB 47. We got Brian Robinson goes as RB 40. Gibson falls to RB 27. Dameon Pierce has really, been a hot topic over the past couple weeks. The Texans didn't even play him in the second preseason game. I think that's very telling how they feel about him. He goes as RB 32. In fact, Pianowski, and I like his squad. Like he started CMC, Adams, Carr. Like I really like that start from him quite a bit, actually. But I feel like I like his team, but he did get some buzzy players. Pierce, Robinson, Pacheco, Isaiah McKenzie, all on his squad. And then, so those are the guys. So it's kind of a loaded question, but maybe let's talk about the Washington backfield. How do you feel about it? How is this going to play out? Are you worried about Gibson? Do you feel like Robinson's a good pick in around running back 40? How do you feel?
Yeah, Chris, I think it's about projecting how the team is going to be that year. What I avoid is a buzzy performance. So a player jumps off the page, has a great game, without any context within the framework. So if a hot young receiver had a big receiving game on a team that really has solid receivers in front of him and is a run heavy team, that I ignore. But Washington is interesting. The idea that Antonio Gibson is going to be fine when he was returning kicks in the second preseason game is crazy to me. Because remember, redraft season is a week-to-week game. This is not best ball. So I'm sure that Antonio Gibson at some point, I don't know, Chris, middle of October, is going to have 6 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown like he had that big run against the Bills, I think it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
But can you rely on Antonio Gibson week in, week out in your lineup and be confident? I don't think so. I do like a player like Isaiah Pacheco because he is someone who I project in the event of an injury could see a substantial volume of the offense in a week-to-week basis. The issue with Washington is I'm going to go with Brian Robinson because his value is less. Gibson has been dropping, but I cannot see a path in Washington where J.D. McKissic is eliminated, barring injury. Right. Brian Robinson, this was just smoke and mirrors that he was starting in the second preseason game. And the plan all along is to bring Antonio Gibson in as the lead running back when he's returning kicks. It's like a clue game. That's too many signals for me to invest. But I don't mind a player late who has some buzz like Pacheco because in the event of an injury, I think he could be their starting running back. So that's how I differentiate it. I'm fine with an explosive performance, provided that I can see a path where this could be a weekly result for this player.
Yeah, and I mean, you're linked to Pacheco's linked to a better offense, clearly, right. And a quarterback, Kansas City. And, I know it's only preseason, but he's had some first team offense reps.
Yes.
I think he caught like a red zone target as well inside the 10 from Mahomes. So like, that's all very, very appealing. It's just with this Kansas City team, we've been down this road before, right? CEH a couple of years ago, 101, right? You go back and it's like, oh, wow, I wish I would have taken Taylor or Swift and in dynasty leagues, Cam Akers, things like that. But Darwin Thompson created a lot of buzz. It's linked to KC and Andy Reid and Mahomes. So but I think this price was pretty fair. Like 12th round, 12.6. As I mentioned, RB 47. I think it's pretty fair. What do you think about Pierce? RB 32. Jake thought he was surprised where he went. Jake thought maybe he would have went a little bit earlier. So you see in the 9th round, Penny goes ahead of him, Stevenson. I think it's fair where he went. Edwards ahead of him, Gibson, Harris, and Chase Edmonds. Do you think he could be a top 30 running back?
Yes, I do. I think he's been that impressive. John McClain, who's retired now, but he's a longtime guy locked into the Texans. I always follow the beat reporters. He's mentioned that he thinks Pierce is legit. Again, here we go. All the data points that we're hearing with Pierce could line up to him being the starter there. And that's when you take an RB early or you go hero RB, something like that. I want to take a bunch of shots on players like Pierce. I was hoping Pierce would come back to me. He went right away, right before I even had a chance. So yes, I like a guy like that. I don't want to have a player like Gibson, who we've seen production and it's been sporadic. Now he has more competition. I'd rather have a guy that we don't know in Pierce, who has flashed, who could absolutely improve. And if he doesn't, you really didn't lose a lot with your draft capital.
Exactly.
You know, you took a couple shots there. You will need your top players to perform. That's why you want your top 3 or 4 picks to have solid years. If you do that, you're going to be in the mix all year. So grab a player like him, a Brian Robinson, Zamir White, and hope that one of them hits. I'm fine with Pierce. I like him, and I think that all the signs that we're getting out of Houston are supporting that he could be the starter. So it's worth the risk.
Yeah, I think it's totally worth it as well. I mean, if you like a guy, you be aggressive and grab him. To your point, right? That's not going to cost you a whole lot in that 9th round. If it doesn't work out for Pianowski, he has some other. I mean, he took Singletary after him, Robinson. So these guys that we're talking about, those trendy players, it's very telling in Washington. It doesn't seem like Ron Rivera really likes Gibson. He's said things like, he's got this stutter step and he fumbles the ball. Like go run with the second and third team. You mentioned, returning kicks. They brought back JD McKissick. He's just a couple years removed from 80 grabs. He played all 2-minute drills and third down work with them last year. And then they get to go in the draft and draft a big body running back who not only could steal first and second down opportunities from Gibson, but goal line work from Antonio Gibson. So I think it's very, very telling. Let's talk about your team. Let's bring it up, Tyler, Mike's squad here. So we kind of have it color coordinated here, but as you saw on the board, you did start Allen, Cousins, Saquon. My goodness, you still got a very strong RB1, picking in that one spot and going with 2 quarterbacks right away. You got Tony Pollard, and you mentioned Stevenson and Jeff Wilson, right? I mean, no, I don't think anybody's be shocked if he's these RB2. It does sound like Elijah Mitchell's ready to go week 1. Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson, Brendan Cooks, Brendan Ayuk. We got a Brendan IN for Cooks, ON for Ayuk, Jacoby Myers, Tyler Boyd, Marvin Jones, Dawson Knox paired up there, as you see on the board, with Josh Allen, Noah Fant, and then the Steelers defense. Man, yeah, like Sutton is a target of mine. Deontay's fallen down draft boards, has been a target hog over the past couple of years. Brendan Cooks, I feel like, is completely undervalued and underrated as a fantasy football and a real life player. It doesn't seem like anybody wants this guy. He's been traded multiple times over the course of his career. Brendan Ayuk, I think, is in for a breakout season. Tyler Boyd, I think, is underrated. Marvin Jones finished as a top 50 wide receiver. I like this core that you have. Talk to me about one of them, the guy that you're maybe most excited about.
Well, the plan, I would tell you, was to load up on high volume wide receivers. That's what I wanted to do. So I can't pass on Barkley. And I don't necessarily have some attachment to Barkley. I'm not a giant fan. But if he stays healthy, he is one of the few running backs that's going to be a 3-down back. He's going to get the goal line touches. So to me, it's worth the risk. I'm with you on Cortland Sutton. That's one of my flag plants. I feel like, Chris, last year, my big plant was Cooper Kupp. I said it over and over again. This is a guy who had 100 receptions and had, I think it was 3 touchdowns. How could he not be better with Matthew Stafford? I didn't think he was going to be the offensive player of the year, but I thought he was an extreme value in round 5. I have the same feeling with Sutton. Sutton had 1,100 yards with Drew Lock and Joe Flacco. Now here comes Russell Wilson, who at least projects to be out of the student body left, student body right offense of the Seattle Seahawks. And Sutton is the clear guy. It's not Judy. The loss of Patrick hurts. It gives more targets for Sutton. He's been connected in the red zone. He's looked good in the preseason. That is one of my guys. That I would say him and Michael Pittman are my 2 go-to guys. But I knew when I took Cousins, I wasn't getting Pittman, so I targeted Sutton. That's a corner piece of my wide receiver build. It's got to hit, and I hope it does.
I was really thinking about Pittman too. I went Pitts and I was like, can I really take Pittman ahead of like Mike Evans and AJ? I was like, I know that I won't get him. Like, again, you have your guys and you draft them, because when you're in a league like this, or even if you're in your buddies, casual fantasy football fans, like, these guys are not going to come back to you at that point if you're picking on the ends of drafts. So you do have to be aggressive. But I mean, I just think this is a match made in heaven. You said it, 1,100 yards with Locke. Like, are you kidding me? The quarterback play that they had. Now you got Sutton, high A-dot guy. We've talked before about deep targets. He was inside the top 10 in terms of targets of at least 20 yards down the field, percentage of those targets inside the top 10 as well. Then you have Russell Wilson, who was tied with Allen, 74 pass attempts of at least 20 yards, and he missed 3 games. So really, he was ahead of Allen. 19% of his pass attempts at least 20 yards down the field.
Yep.
And very similar when you look at the targets for Lockett last year with Russell Wilson. So I think you just like take Lockett, boom, Sutton. And I think there may be more, not as much boom or bust, I think, with Cortland Sutton, maybe some more consistency. At the end of the day, Lockett always seems to finish as like a wide receiver too, but there's highs and lows with him. But yeah, I am with you, man. I really like Cortland Sutton. Before we get you out of here,
especially because their schedule for wide receivers, the Broncos schedule, is one of the best in the NFL late in the year. So you get to the fantasy playoffs, look at who they're playing. And I don't see a path here, Chris, where the Denver defense is going to continually shut down the AFC West opponents. Chargers are going to score. Chiefs are going to score. Raiders have a lot of weapons. So there's a good chance of shootouts. Russell Wilson, top wide receiver. I'll take it. It really comes down to that. Yep.
Who would you pick to win that division?
I picked the Broncos. I'm down on the Chiefs because I think there's a lot of change, and I think the Chiefs really did show a little bit of warts. I'm not saying they're going to be under 500, but that was a bad loss to the Bengals. Now you take Tyreek Hill out. Travis Kelce's 32 years old. A lot of changeover at the receivers. I'm concerned about the Chiefs. So if I'm looking for a team to step forward, Russell Wilson has been an MVP candidate for half of the years in each of the last 4 years, first half or second half. Yeah. I think he puts it all together. I love the change. It should be pass happy. He's away from Seattle. He's been able to do that with incredible efficiency with Pete Carroll. So my pick is Denver. I understand it's a long shot. People like the Chargers as well. They're probably the favorite, but the odds are better on the Broncos. That's who I'm going with.
I immediately put in a bet when they acquired Russell Wilson. I said, this is it, right? This is the key, of course. Reasons why we like Sutton as well. I mean, so efficient to your point, and one of the best deep balls I think we've ever seen, certainly over the last 10 years or so. I mean, Broncos fans have to be absolutely ecstatic of what could happen. Dude, I want to keep you for one more, if you don't mind. You good for one more?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's break because I want to ask you just about your backfields because you got a bit of a split there, right? With Pollard, Zeke, and Stevenson and Harris. So I want to ask you about those two guys, and then we'll get you out of here. One more segment with Randle. Hang tight. Watching Mean Streets on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Mike Randle here with you, continuing to talk about last night's SuperFlex League, courtesy of Jake Seeley and the Flex League. So I want to ask you before we get you out of here on the backfield in Dallas and the backfield in New England. Those are the two running backs that I would like to have out of those backfields as well. I think Ramondre Stevenson is in for a breakout season. We're seeing Ty Montgomery maybe get that James White role, and maybe people want Stevenson to catch passes. We know Damian Harris doesn't really. I think he can, but it's not really something that he's done here in the NFL. And then there's Tony Pollard, more receiving yards and fewer targets and catches than Zeke. Zeke had a down year, still finished with 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. Pretty solid despite having a down year still. But Zeke is the guy who goes ahead of Pollard, and Damian Harris has been the guy that's gone ahead of Ramondre Stevenson. How do you think those two backfields will play out? Are you out on Zeke because you have Pollard, or you just feel like both of these guys could return value?
When I've gone 0 RB, I've sometimes taken both Zeke and Pollard and just locked up both of them because I have a strong wide receiver core. I'll go wait on quarterback, let's say, and go from there. I love Pollard. I'm looking at this Dallas offense. When Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott have been together, I think it was 3 years ago, they were the 5th highest scoring offense. Then for the first 5 games before Dak broke his leg, they were first. And then last year, I think they were first again or third, so somewhere in the top. So they have a history of playing fast and scoring a lot of points when Dak Prescott's on the field and Kellen Moore's the offensive coordinator. Now throwing a much harder schedule because they're not coming off the poor season with Andy Dalton. They're going to be in more shootouts. So now we have a team that's going to be in more shootouts with a quality quarterback and a fast pace. Where are the targets going? CeeDee Lamb, I understand that. Dalton Schultz, excellent. But after that, we have James Washington's going to be out for a little bit. Michael Gallup's going to be out for a little bit. I know Tolbert's there. I get it. I think Tony Pollard is going to be Alvin Kamara light. I think he is going to, I believe the reports that he's going to be in the slot. I believe the reports that they're both on the field at the same time. And when you have a running back who has improved his receptions each of those first 3 years and receiving yards now, I love it. And of course, we have the one game, Chris, talk about extrapolating a small sample size. One game when Zeke wasn't on the field, Tony Pollard overall RB1 that week. So I target Pollard in every single draft, especially in a PPR format. And if I get that RB early, I get like a Jonathan Taylor or I get a Saquon Barkley, I'm going to go wide receiver. And then I'm going to try to grab Pollard and or Dillard and or Stevenson. Those are my targets. Those are my guys. And I was happy Pollard was there.
I couldn't agree more, right? Lining him up in different parts of the field in the slot, using both running backs and, an opportunity in the first few weeks of the season for sure to be like the third option, right? In this passing attack, which you mentioned is up tempo, and they've been one of the best offenses in the league over the past couple of years. I love AJ Dillon too. Again, I kind of feel like if I can get Aaron Jones, great. If I can't, I want to get Dillon. Kind of the same, either make one of these guys a priority for you in drafts. I feel like they can kind of be, and I think Zeke and Pollard can do that too. Like think back of Ingram and Kamara, right? You mentioned Kamara earlier. Like that was a few years ago. Those two guys both finished as like RB1s, like low end RB1s, and they weren't getting drafted that way. Stevenson, I have some concerns about New England's offense, right? I don't know what the heck they're doing. Right? Matt Patricia's back. Is he play calling? I don't know what the heck is going on there. I think, you got Jacoby Myers. I think he'll continue to be a target hog. Devontae Parker is interesting for touchdowns. But ultimately, Mike, I think this team will run the rock quite a bit. And I think Stevenson could overtake Damian Harris. How do you think that this backfield will play out?
Same thing. Yeah, same thing with value. I believe in Belichick, Chris. So I hear all the concerns and I see them, and the no offensive coordinator and Judge. I get everything that's a concern, but I do believe they're going to run the ball. Mac Jones, I think, is going to take a huge step forward. He is a solid, accurate quarterback. That is what he is. So he is going to attack the short to intermediate area of the field. I think Jacoby Myers has huge touchdown regression. He reminds me of a poor man's Cooper Kupp from last year, is that he's got a lot of targets, he got a lot of yards, not a lot of touchdowns. Take away some maybe of the receptions, but give him more touchdowns and he can be a huge value. Ramondre Stevenson has proven it. He had 2 touchdowns twice last year. He can catch the ball. I think he had 3 games with 4 receptions. Big guy, agile. Damian Harris, that fumble against the Dolphins and inside the 10-yard line. And he doesn't catch passes. So I think there is definitely a path. There's no James White anymore. I think Stevenson is the back to own. He's a guy I'm taking a flyer on. Same thing. He's later draft capital who could pay off. He is the guy who is going to be involved here in the passing downs, and he could be the hammer at the goal line. And if Damian Harris fumbles, we could back ourselves into a LeGarrette Blount-esque type of year, even on a team that may not be great. But I do think Belichick figures it out. I think we're underselling him a little bit. I know there's concerns, but Mac Jones is a smart, accurate quarterback. Belichick, of course, legendary coach. And if they run a lot, Stevenson's involved. So it checks all the boxes on a minimal draft capital risk for me in the middle rounds.
It's hard to, count out Belichick, right? He always seems to figure it out. You're right. And a lot of people are pretty hard on New England's offense. Dude, this was fantastic. I could chop it up with you all day. And I had so many more questions to talk, but of course we do have to get out of here. Why don't you take the time to tell people where they can catch your work?
Work is all over, guys. Follow me on Twitter at Randle Rant and 4for4 Football Betting Pros, of course. Just been doing work all over the place and finished up the Roto Underworld draft kit. So it's a labor of love. You get it, Chris. Love it. And college basketball season around the corner. My Screen to Screener podcast. So just doing the work, loving it like you, grinding away. And I will sleep whenever. We'll worry about sleep some other time.
Yeah, we're about to sleep another time. It's football season, and it's an exciting time of the year, as you mentioned. A lot of other sports happening. So the big one takeaway in SuperFlex, what would it be for somebody who's just catching this show and they're going to do a SuperFlex draft for the first time this season? What would be the one piece of advice you would give them on the way out?
Do not wait on your quarterbacks. You have to get at least one quarterback early and take two quarterbacks if you think you can get two of your top 6 to 8 guys. If you can't, wait on that second quarterback. Grab the Mac Joneses of the world, Trevor Lawrence. Go with the running backs and wide receivers. So again, if you're going to invest, it's like when you're in your traditional leagues. You take a tight end early or a quarterback early, they have to really significantly outperform the competition. Travis Kelce was great. Last year, Mark Andrews is better. So if you invested early draft capital in Travis Kelce, you were disappointed. So you have to get a quarterback. But if you can't get two of your guys that you really love, wait on that second quarterback and stock up on the other positions.
I love it. Mike Randle at Randle Rant on the Twitter machine. Thank you so much. Good luck this season with the rest of your drafts and all your bets. And hopefully we can do this again soon, dude. We're going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to dive into a little bit more of my team, and I got some MLB picks to round out Mean Streets. Keep her locked.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Prize Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have Prize Picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our Prize Picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Welcome back in. I wanted to bring up my team here quickly before we say goodbye from this draft. We may bring it up again maybe next week when we have somebody else here. But my 2 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and Trevor Lawrence. Austin Eckler was my first pick in the 10 spot. I debated between, maybe Jamar Chase or Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry in there a little bit. But what can you say about Austin Eckler, right? I mean, he's got the third most catches since 2018, 255, high-powered offense, aggressive head coach, a lot of shootouts with the Chargers this year inside that division. So I was pretty happy to get him. I would have went Jefferson or Kupp if those guys were available to me at 10. I was going to let the quarterback fall to me, and it was Kyler Murray. And then I just wasn't going to go quarterback at the back end of the draft. I just wouldn't have, a stud running back or a stud wide receiver. I don't really have a stud wide receiver, but if you've been paying attention to me on the show, and I did get some guys that I like Hollywood Brown is somebody that I certainly like. It wasn't, a strategy for me to stack Hollywood with Kyler. I just like Hollywood, so it was going to be a target of mine anyways. I do have Mike Williams ranked ahead of him, and I could have taken Mike Williams, but the fact that I did have Kyler, that's how I split the difference there, just to get Hollywood with Kyler. And then Christian Kirk kind of fell to me as the lead guy. I don't think he's as good as the contract that Jacksonville gave him, but man, he should be top 15, top 20 in targets. I don't see why he wouldn't be. He should get a lot of work. Amari Cooper is not on my radar. I've said this a lot here. I am concerned about Cleveland's offense from a passing standpoint. No Watson for the first 12 weeks of the season. Jacoby Brissett's not a guy that I really believe in, but I got him as wide receiver 34. At that point, I just feel like, I got to take him at the value. I could treat him like Brendan Cooks as a guy who could get 35% of his team's air yards, 27% target share. Those numbers would be inside the top 10. Volume is certainly key and everything. And for Elijah Moore, the quarterback play, right, is spotty, but he had better games without Zach Wilson. And down the stretch, actually, Moore was great. His last 6 games, he averaged 5.6 catches, 8.5 targets, and he had 5 touchdowns. Other wide receivers, MVS, just taking a shot on the upside there. I like that he's getting in for 2 wide receiver sets. I like Sky Moore as well. But I think we'll see more from MVS. I think he'll be on the field a little bit more. Man, they paid him more than Juju. I think they like this guy. High-powered offense again in KC, taking shots deep down the field. Marlon Mack was just like a pick at the very end. That's it. I just felt like, you know what, I'll just take him because I'll probably cut him. He'd be my first drop. But if anything happens to Pierce, then Marlon Mack will be back into the picture. But I really do like Dameon Pierce overall as a player. Nico Collins and Alec Pierce, these are guys that I've talked about breakout seasons, sleepers on this show. A second-year wide receiver for Nico Collins was drafted in the 3rd round a couple years ago. Big body, man, can go up and get it. 6'4", 220 pounds. Second year inside this offense with Davis Mills. I think he could be a top 60 wide receiver. Alec Pierce, again, wide receiver 2 sets. I'm not a big believer in Paris Campbell. Pierce is already ahead of him on the depth chart. Somebody has to be the number 2 option inside this offense after Michael Pittman. I've talked a lot about Miles Sanders. I don't think I need to go into too much detail about Miles Sanders, but I still believe that he is the lead there, arguably the best offensive line in football. I don't think Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott are stealing first down touches from him. Maybe some goal line stuff here and there, and Hurts will do the same. But when Sanders came back after the injury in the final 5 games, he averaged 90 rushing yards per game on 15 carries per game. And Kenneth Gainwell had 0 rushing attempts in 3 of those 5 games. And the one that he had double-digit carries, he just it was a blowout game there. So Tyler Algier, again, good landing spot, I think, for Tyler Algier to maybe get first down, second down opportunities, and maybe some goal line touches as well. Kyle Pitts, right? Give the guy some touchdowns on North American soil. Just 1 touchdown last year, 15.1 yards per reception, was number 1 among tight ends and number 5 overall in the NFL among guys who had 50-plus targets. So, yeah, I don't have an alpha wide receiver, but I can view Kyle Pitts as my wide receiver 1, and I don't think there's that big of a gap between him and for Travis Kelce. I've said it a lot on this show. And for Trevor Lawrence, I think can be a number 2 quarterback, right? He averaged 22 rushing yards per game over his last 9 games of the season. An upgrade at the coaching position, no question. We have one more segment here, a couple MLB picks on the way out. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back in. Final segment here. A couple MLB picks for you. A lot of action happening around the diamond this afternoon, but here's what I'm going with for this evening. Shane McClanahan over 6.5 strikeouts. Did not get Corey Kluber yesterday over 5.5, but basically hit everything else. I still like to attack this Angels squad. Hey, did you hear Mike Trout, his 1,500 hit was a bomb to left field? Yeah, they still lost 11-1. The Halos are atrocious, man. A lot of swing and miss in their lineup, and they can't really hit lefties at all. Bottom three in like every single category. So give me McClanahan. The Jays have outscored the Red Sox 49-13 in their last 4 games. I think we'll see a lot of runs here today. You get plus money there. Zach Gallen, a really good matchup against KC. Since they traded away a lot of their pieces, they've been inside the top 15 in strikeout percentage. Actually, they're third. Wow. Their last 30 days, 25% strikeout rate over the last 30 days. And Jordan Alvarez, anytime he's up against a righty, give it to me. And he's up against Dylan Bundy today. So good luck around the diamond. Make sure you check out MLB Picks and Props around the diamond coming your way at 1:30 Eastern, our FTN Network YouTube page, and 6 Eastern on Game Plus Network. More MLB Picks on that show. Have a great Wednesday. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.